Welcome back to Crit and Crit. I'm Axion.
I'm Sit.
And we are continuing to work our way through Castlevania Circle of the Moon. And our discussion of that's the second time I've done that. Of Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. Wow, I am having a day.
You certainly are having a day, but still somehow a better day than the creature has. On, like, any given day.
You know what? That's fair.
Thank you for playing the Misery Olympics. You may collect your participation medal at the Weeping booth. Anyway, one of the major things that we've kind of been putting off talking about because we got fixated on characters for a while is really one of the major themes of Frankenstein. Like most science fiction, it is a cautionary tale against basically the hubris of thinking you know better than, common sense. Or, as we tend to know Frankenstein mostly today, playing God. Seeking knowledge that man was not meant to have. Doing things that are just against nature and paying the ultimate price for it. And, yeah, I can't argue with that. It absolutely is, because Victor has every opportunity to not do what he's doing, and, yeah, the entire book is basically consequences.
We can't even really feel sorry for him. Because it's very much a situation of, you did this to yourself.
It's like, how do I put this? You know how in Doctor Strange he gets in a car accident because he's speeding in the rain and playing on his phone when he's supposed to be, driving? So it's like, yeah, I'm sorry you're in pain, Mr. Main Character, but you literally did this to yourself.
Yeah, it's like, what do you want me to do? You're lucky that you still have a character arc.
Yep. But, yeah, playing God is something that comes up a lot in science fiction as a whole. Just the idea of a mad scientist who can subvert the cycle of life and death and rebirth and whatever the heck you want to put in on this. And I'm pretty sure Frankenstein is the origin of most of those. If not all, because as we've mentioned, Frankenstein is one of, if not the earliest science fiction works. So, yeah. Victor does not see any problem with, I'm going to create life. I'm going to take a corpse and animate it, and it's going to be awesome. The fact that he's having to do this by sneaking into graveyards and mausoleums to steal body parts should probably, give most people pause of, let me stop and rethink what I've done with my life. But it doesn't give him any pause, because nothing gives him pause.
At this point, or by this point in the story, Victor is so used to getting his own way that I don't think he even thinks to consider that it might be a possibility that someone might tell him no. At best, he will run into somebody who doesn't understand, in which case he will mock them in the narration. But as you've said in multiple cases in our previous discussions, Victor's complaint seems to be, they're going to steal my work. Which is a completely different reason to focus on nobody finding out what you're doing. And has absolutely nothing to do with how moral or immoral it may be. It's not just that Victor is playing God and ignoring the moral restrictions of his culture, it's that he doesn't even care about them. They're not on his radar. Oh, it's you.
Yep, and the hubris here is especially evident in that, well, you could prove that power over death is possible by reanimating anything. You could get a canary and bring it back. And you know what the worst thing a canary could do is?
Make noise.
Fly into a window and scare someone. You know what the worst thing a 7-foot-tall, muscle-bound monstrosity could do is?
Choke people to death?
Multiple murders! But Victor soundly rejects this idea. When I had found so astonishing a power placed within my hands, I hesitated a long time concerning the manner in which I should employ it. Although I possessed the capacity of bestowing animation, yet to prepare a frame for the reception of it with all its intricacies of fibers, muscles, and veins still remained a work of inconceivable difficulty and labor. I doubted at first whether I should attempt the creation of a being like myself or one of simpler organization, but my imagination was too much exalted by my first success to permit me to doubt of my ability to give life to an animal as complex and wonderful as man. So, yeah, his immediate thought is, should I do this on something smaller and easier? No. Go big or go home. And he does go home to a funeral.
Yeah, it's kind of... And his reasoning is just, my ego and my imagination won't let me settle for something simple. I have to
I do have to issue a correction.
Go ahead.
I do have to issue a correction. 8 feet tall, not 7 feet tall. Because, as the minuteness of the parts formed a great hindrance to my speed, I resolved, contrary to my first intention, to make the being of gigantic stature. That is to say, about 8 feet in height and proportionably large. So, he didn't make it big to be impressive. He made it big because bigger part mean work faster. Yay. So we can rush the process that's going to ultimately lead to doom, disaster, gloom, etc.
But even then, it is a case of he's doing a human because anything else won't be satisfactory to him. It won't be grandiose enough. It doesn't feed his ego. And in the end, that's what it comes down to. It's all about his ego. He makes his decisions based on, not on the rationality and the appropriateness of whatever he decides to do, but on what strokes his ego in the best way.
And he never once stops to consider, the ramifications of what he's doing. So, again, recall, basically in most centuries before the 20th, death is just a common thing. Like, we consider, A Christmas Carol a ghost story today, but, a lot of stories are just like, oh yeah, people died and now we're talking to their ghost. So, the fact that Victor sets out to conquer death is very much antithetical to the society at the time, which was very accepting of, just been very resigned to the fact. It's kind of why we have so many really fancy grave markers dating back to early centuries like that.
People are gonna die anyway, we might as well make it look nice.
Yeah, but he never stops to think about the ramifications. There's no thought for how will people react to 8-foot-tall patchwork man. There's no thought at all to how will I care for 8-foot-tall patchwork man. There's no thought for how will my family react. Oh, pretty much the only reaction he has for his family is, oh, Dad has sent me a letter to say he wishes I would write home more, because I haven't spoken to them in about 2 years.
That's a problem for
but
future.
But there's no consideration. Yes. Everything's a problem for future Victor, and then when it is, he's like, how are there so many things wrong in my life? But he doesn't think through the fact that there can be consequences to his actions, especially if they're, playing with the very fabric of reality and our understanding of the nature of life itself. But, again, I must learn things and put my name on a great discovery. And it's like, even though he is telling the story theoretically to Walton to warn him away from his obsessive journey to the North Pole, he's like, it's meant to be a warning, but it really feels like a brag.
I was about to say,
So,
is he?
Like, I'm not trying to call it a humble brag.
I'm not sure it is a warning away, because when the other sailors show up...
Well, he says it is.
And yet, when the other sailors show up, wanting to mutiny because they are... of course that happened. I was trying to dodge. The other sailors show up wanting to mutiny because of being stuck in the ice. He berates them for not being devoted enough to the cause of discovery to take the risk of losing a few lives.
Okay, when has Victor ever followed his own advice? But he explicitly tells Walton, "I see by your eagerness and the wonder and hope with which your eyes express, my friend, that you expect to be informed of the secret with which I am acquainted. That cannot be. Listen patiently until the end of my story, and you will easily perceive why I am reserved on that subject. I will not lead you on, unguarded and ardent as I was then, to your destruction and infallible misery. Learn from me, if not by my precepts, at least by my example, how dangerous is the acquirement of knowledge, and how much happier that man is who believes his native town to be the world than he who aspires to become greater than his nature will allow." So, yeah, he straight up tells Walton, "Look, I'm telling you what has led to my complete and utter ruin. It's not awesome. I mean, it's pretty impressive I did this, but it's not awesome. Don't follow in my footsteps." But I don't know, like, yeah, he does berate the sailors at the end. I think it's just, he's trying to warn him away, but at the same time, he's still like, "But you should still want to learn things, even though I've just spent an entire book telling you why you shouldn't." But honestly, that's kind of the thing here, is there's a lot of, quote, common sense regarding ethics in scientific advancement and experimentation. But if people don't stop and think things through, or aren't willing to follow their own advice, what are we going to end up with? And I believe you had a tie-in you wanted to talk about with regard to the subject.
So, the entire thing of Victor creating artificial life and his ignoring of important precautions and his disregard for the well-being of anyone but his own fame. It's obviously not one-to-one, but you can see a parallel between that and the modern development of artificial intelligence and machine learning. It's 2023. We are living in the age of ChatGPT and other AI programs.
Just call it lame cyberpunk.
We are living in the my actual preferred term for it is boring dystopia.
Yeah, like cyberpunk kind of implies dystopia. That's why I said lame cyberpunk, because it's specifically like AI concerns that you're
Well, I mean, a boring dystopia is a more well-used term that people will recognize and be able to connect to other discussions on the subject, which is why I bring it up. But it is kind of a lame cyberpunk. It's all of the depressing, miserable, controlling, powerless, terrible feelings of living in that kind of hellscape of a life, but none of the cool techno.
Yeah, like, if we're gonna live through the computer apocalypse, can we at least get the aesthetic to go with it?
Yeah, there's nobody running around. Well, there's not a lot of people running around with crazy colored hair and a bunch of mechanical implants that let them do really awesome things. And as somebody who likes that aesthetic and who sees a lot of potential and a lot of necessity in the idea of transhumanism, it is immensely and continually frustrating to see the importance of this societal discussion lost in the constant drowning of wow, cool future.
Yep, but let's be honest. Much like with Victor's situation, the potential of this technology that we have today that would theoretically make a lot of lives better would be flawed by the simple fact of the person, or people in this case, poised to implement it.
And that's kind of the point I was getting to.
Can you imagine getting your cyborg implants only to find that breathing is paywalled?
Yep, or that you didn't make your vision, you ran out of vision insurance for turning your eyes off.
Or paying an IT team is too costly, so there's not really any security on this, and somebody just hacked your heart.
And this is kind of the point I was trying to get to, is... Pardon me. So, it's actually... While those cyberpunky dystopian fears are completely valid in that kind of situation, the stuff I was getting to is actually a lot simpler. The biggest problem with the whole AI thing today, in real life, is that we have reached this point where we have these, these systems being created. Oh, that's cool. And they're costing people their livelihoods, because we still live in a society where your ability to survive is tied inextricably to your contributions to someone else's wealth and well-being. And the big problem with this is, this was kind of the dream of the past, say, 50, 60, 70 years. We're going to advance technology to the point where we can have machines do everything for us. We're going to create robots that can do all of the work, and humanity is going to be able to rest and be happy and focus on things like artistic pursuits, reading, writing, drawing, other art projects, whatever floats your boat. Because we don't need to do that, we don't need to just do labor for the purpose of surviving, because now we have robots to do that. The problem is, we're starting to get the robots to do that, but we're still making people rely on having to have performed labor to get money to survive, because everything still costs money to live. And we're getting closer to reaching a tipping point where too many people have been replaced by robots, but none of them have been given the ability to survive without the jobs that the robots replaced. And that's why we're seeing a lot of discussions about things like universal basic income. And, of course, there's obviously much more detailed and much more thorough discussions. I'm keeping this very basic. And while it's obviously not one-to-one, there is a definite parallel here with what Victor has done. He has invested himself in a project and created something with no concern for how it affects the society around him or what it would do to other people affected by it. And admittedly, the creature's problems are much more human, much more sympathetic than, say, the issues we're having with AI. I mainly make the comparison because they come from similar levels of willing obliviousness. Victor is focused completely on his project and does not notice nor care about how it affects anyone until it starts hurting him personally. And of course, by then it's too late.
Yep. But something I think we need to focus on here with the playing God thing is, you never see this narrative outside of a situation where your mad scientist playing God is independently financially stable. So it kind of seems like there's a certain element of classism involved with this. Because, well, Victor has mentioned not only is his family wealthy, but he himself has never had to suffer until his mother died, and then he, made everything else his own self. But he's the type of person who, like, since he is so absorbed in himself and what he can do and making himself look good, that he's never really had to consider the needs of others. So I don't think somebody from, say, Clerval's background, which is, I would call him, like, upper middle class, because he's clearly in a position where he can afford these things and hobnob with people of Victor's class, but he's more grounded in reality. He's never been quite as oblivious to things as Victor is on a daily basis. So I think there's some parallels to today's situation as well, where the people who are making these calls without regard for the impact they have on those of fewer means are the ones who've never had to consider that in their lives or are unable to care.
And that was actually exactly what I was going to say next, is, since you brought up Victor's wealth, it's like, yeah, and look exactly who the same people are, or look exactly, it's the same kind of people, the same level of wealth and prosperity that are disregarding the state of others because, ooh, cool tech. And it's a problem that we keep running into because those same people with their obsession with the cool tech are also the ones determining how much, say, you get paid for your job that you must have to stay alive. Save point? Not a save point.
I mean, there also could just be the element of, as we mentioned before, Victor is just basically a dunk on Lord Byron, who was also, like, the epitome of, screw the common sense, I have money. And basically, some people have blood Byron had scandal.
C chart. Roll dice and chart.
But yeah, I'm not really sure what else to say here other than insert Jeff Goldblum. You were so focused on whether or not you could.
Yep, pretty much. But then again, Jurassic Park itself is just Frankenstein in concept, just with big lizards. And genetic engineering instead of necromancy and corpses. It's the same basic concept. It's even worse in the book. Because Hammond is a lot more like Victor in the book than he is in the movies.
I don't know, like, I kind of find it very realistic that he would try to be so nice and affable to everybody who's not on his payroll. As far as Jurassic Park goes.
Oh,
like,
he
I don't think there's much
is.
change.
He absolutely is in the books. Have you read Jurassic Park?
Yes, but some time ago. So that's what I was saying. Like he's very nice and grandfatherly in the movie, but he's also completely dismissive of his employees and everything therein. So like, I don't see it as big an issue because I find it more realistic. Because like you see people like that today, where like they're very kind to the people they need social reciprocity from,
and he is that way in
but
the book.
No one else. Yep, and I see that in the movie as well. It's been a while though.
Yep. The main difference is in the book is that he is aware of all of the potential problems with his park that he is not aware of in the movie, and deliberately cutting corners despite warnings from Nedry and several other people whose job it is to, help him avoid those problems, but that would cost money.
Is the Velociraptor named Twitter?
I don't think any of the dinosaurs are named in the book.
Never mind. See you guys next time.
See ya.